Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's user group. We'll get started in just a moment.
Julia, I'm loving it. You get to do some work outside today?
Yes, I do. Thank you. And welcome, everybody. Are we ready to go?
Yeah, I'll just do a quick tech stuff and then I'll hand it off. So welcome to the user group. Now that we have kind of a good critical mass here, I'll just cover a few technical details before we start. This is Zoom webinar. If you haven't joined us for a Zoom webinar before as a platform anyway, that means your cameras and microphones will be disabled by default. So if you need to ask a question or just use chat with each other with the panel, you can use either the chat function or Q&A. We do ask that you use Q&A for questions just because it's a lot easier for us to sort through what's been answered already. But for general discussion items, chat is great for that. Just make sure you select everyone if you want everyone to actually see your message. So without further ado, I'd like to hand it off to Julia Finocchi.
Hello, all, and welcome to June. I'm sitting outside enjoying the weather. As I get hotter, I may end up having to turn my camera off so you don't see me perspire. I'd like to start with an apology and a little bit of an explanation to you all. If you would go on to the next slide, Michael. We had a power outage with Edge this week, as probably many of you realized when you tried to log in. So for the majority of Monday, June 13th, Edge was unable to provide any information to our subscribers. We had an update of the software at one of our vendors, which caused the issue, which they were quickly able to sort of remedy within the day. So hundreds of you reached out for assistance and access was restored by the following morning. But, you know, technology is technology and updates have to happen. But if you are still encountering any issues, just reach out to edge@acro.org or use the contact us form within the page and we'd be happy to help you. Again, our apologies, and we don't expect something like this to happen again.
Yeah,
right.
this was a one-off just with an upgrade that was happening. There were some old applications that were deprecated, a lot of technical behind the scenes, behind the curtain magic. But basically, it's all good to go again. And if you have not yet gotten your access restored, like Julia said, shoot me an email and I will be back in touch with you. There are a few outstanding emails that I have still not responded to right now. Some of you may be waiting on that. I apologize. Look for that by the end of today or possibly tomorrow. Like Julia said, hundreds of you were impacted by this. I'm really sorry. All right. But let's talk about what has been working and what we have been working on.
That's it. Well, first, let me say that my hosts with me are Drew Carlisle and my good colleague Dave Mahali from ACRO. So welcome. We're glad they're here with us. And now let me just introduce the International Education Standards Council. Our chair is not with us today, but we have several other good members with us today. Included in that are Nancy Katz, Robert Watkins, Leslie Clausen-Eicher, and am I missing anybody else? Oh, and Shelby Kearley. So we're happy to have them all, and they are wonderful resources for us. If you want to go to the next slide, Mike. I would just say that our IESC provides a really valuable function, and we utilize the expertise of these individuals on the council to review and update our recommendations within EDGE. The council is composed of professionals who have worked in higher education, as well as private credential evaluation firms. They have many, many years of experience, and you can be confident that the recommendations they make are appropriate, thorough, and well-researched, and represent the varied viewpoints of the higher education community. So welcome, and thank you always to them for all the good work that they do for us. Now, before we go any further, we're going to do what we always do, and we're going to launch a poll to see who we've got here with us. So take a minute and answer the following questions. And as you're answering, I'll just go through these. Are you an EDGE subscriber? Is this your first user group? And what segment do you represent? We like to always find out who's on here. We have 90 participants right now, so thank you for always attending and getting these updates from us.
Yeah, I'm always really curious to see who is on these user groups. It's interesting to see who is coming back, who's adding the questions in. We've gotten a lot of email questions from you wanting to have some of those conversations in advance of the EDGE user group. Thank you. That's really helpful. Being able to do that gives the council members opportunities to go work on that, to do that research, and to have topics for discussion. Like later on today, we're going to be talking about the Teach Los Propios. There have been questions that have come in from everyone about how to understand these that are coming across their desks. Julia, I would say that who is on first, but who's here with the user group today?
Well, I would say that what we have is we have a lot of people here today that are EDGE subscribers. 97% of the attendees, or 70 out of 72 respondents, are EDGE subscribers. The two that are not, we hope that after today's session, you will be inclined to subscribe to EDGE. It is truly a valuable resource. And is this your first user group? Well, we've got a lot of people who have said yes, 22 or 31%, roughly a third of you. Well, we hope you'll come back next month and join us each month thereafter for this meeting. While 69% or 50 of you said no, this is not. So welcome back. We're glad you're here as always. And what segment do you represent? Well, 78%, or a little over 3/4 of you, represent institutional staff. 18% or 13 are with an evaluation service, and we have 3 government representatives with us as well. Welcome, we're glad you're here. All right, thank you for taking the time to do our poll each month. It always gives us a lot of useful information and insight into who we are speaking with. Our agenda today is now up. We're going to have latest updates on rating scales in Azerbaijan. As Drew mentioned, the titulo propios, and explanation and advice for those from Spain, the Master of Arts and Science from New Zealand, and bachelor's degrees from Canada. We'll also talk about some upcoming events, but without further ado, I believe I'm going to turn it over to Shelby, who is going to now talk to you about Azerbaijan.
Hello, everybody. We're going to talk very quickly about some updates that we made on the grading scales for Azerbaijan. On the secondary scales, we've now included a column for the numeric grades 5, 4, and 3, in addition to the indigenous grades that were already there. On the post-secondary or higher education scales, we've removed the ECTS scales because they're not in use in most of the post-secondary education systems. And we've also added a column to add a US equivalence. There's also been a note added to let you know that there is no official regulation that governs grading at any level within Azerbaijan. And that was the quick and dirty overview of what we've updated on grading scales in Azerbaijan. I will now turn the floor over to New Zealand.
Thank you, Shelby. This is Robert. I'll be handling this. As you can see from the slide, it's a little bit, what we say in the agenda is a little, not exactly what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here actually referred to a question that was raised quite some time back. And for that, we apologize, to just now be getting to the final resolution of this, about the master's degrees awarded by universities in New Zealand. And the original entry for the New Zealand master's degrees said that it was 1 to 2 years after a 4-year honors degree. And so the credential device was US master's degree. Well, that's true on the surface, but that's not exactly what could happen. And the questioner, the original question was, what about if someone enters a master's program in New Zealand with a 3-year degree? So we did some research and came up with some interesting information. We took that old entry for the master's degree and refurbished it so that it's more reflective of what's actually happening, so that we include as entry requirements, and therefore the advice that results, the possibility of a 3-year degree or a 4-year honors degree. And so what we had to do was to bifurcate the advice. Usually advice is a single statement, as you've noticed throughout EDGE. In this particular instance, we had to take that and give the three situations where the master's degree that you may have in front of you has been preceded by a certain kind of bachelor's degree, or the length of the master's degree is 1.5, or 2 years. And so we put all that together and gave you advice on each of those circumstances that may arise. The other thing about the bachelor's degree, it turned out that the bachelor's degree we felt was fine as they were there. It was the master's degree that was inaccurate, and therefore we wanted to fix that. So we added to it. Let me just conclude New Zealand by saying that we're actually working on an overall redo of New Zealand, having gone in and looked closely at the educational system, the whole question of 13 versus 12 and so on. We're dealing with that, but we wanted to get the answer to this one question, the master's degree preceded by something other than a four-year honors degree. We wanted to get that into EDGE quickly or quicker than the rest of the changes that may come to New Zealand. And so that we have done. And with that, I'll turn it back to either Julia or whoever's going to handle titulos proprios.
So I think Dave is going to be talking about the titulos proprios, or is this going to be you, Julia?
I think it's Dave.
Yeah, the titulos proprios is one of those that we really do have a lot of perennial questions that come in. People really do try to understand what's going on with this. Dave, can you shed some light on it?
Absolutely. Thanks, Drew. The titulo proprio is nothing more than a university-specific, or sometimes they're called private, usually a master's degree program that is outside of the officially state-sanctioned degree structure in Spain. They're set up to basically respond to the needs of the marketplace and employers, which isn't to say that they're less useful than the official master degree. I should probably mention that the way to tell that you're dealing with a titulo proprio master is that it will not say university master or the official university degree of master on the diploma itself. Currently, these are listed in EDGE under the especialista, which is under the, I believe it's called non-specified, tertiary. What do you call in the drop-down menu where you classify the actual degree?
Yeah, it's currently unspecified, I believe, where you can use that drop down when you look at how a credential is seen in the native education system. This is one that would be classified as none of the above.
Right. And so usually you're going to get a master of something, and it just won't be specified as the official university title of master. So this means that the Ministry of Education and Science hasn't signed off on this curriculum, and consequently the degrees aren't issued in the name of the King of Spain, which the official university master's degrees are. All the licentiate level, the grado level, the master level, and the doctorate level official universities all have the King's name up at the top. So we're going to be working on making the wording a little bit more accessible to people. For instance, if you were looking for a master's degree right now that is a titulo proprio, you won't find it under master in EDGE. It's under this specialist wording, which kind of parallels what we see in Brazil and some other countries with unofficial university master's degrees. A further wrinkle, just to throw in there, is that we are now seeing undergraduate titulo proprios in Spain at the grado level, which is the usually the 4-year now new undergraduate degree. And those are going to be something that we're going to be wanting to look into again pretty soon. But right now, we're working on the Spanish degrees. There is possibility for transfer between degree programs from a titolo proprio to an official university master's degree program. And there is some evidence to suggest that a titolo proprio program can be the same as an official university master program, such that if you go through the administrative hurdles to get the official university degree, you're following one program and you can get 2 different degrees. I suspect that this is kind of an issue for international students versus Spanish national students, which degree they get in those programs. But we don't see very many of those. And the only reason that I ever saw them was that students had complained about the classification of their titolo proprio master as graduate level study rather than an official master's degree. I'll open this up to anybody else who wants to jump in with thoughts on the titolo proprio.
Dave, let me just add that, and I think you started to go there to say it. Where we have it now is a little confusing because it doesn't stand alone. And so what we're going to do is pull that out of the Especialista title entry and enable it to have its own kind of specific entry so that you can spot these a little easier when you go to Edge Spain. That was the only thing that I was really going to add. The Bologna compliant new degrees that Dave referenced are in fact in there now. The 4-year 240 ECTS graduado, sometimes shortened to grado, and then the official masters known as Master Universitario is also in there as well at 1 or 2 years more beyond the graduado. So those are both in there. But the titulos propios entry for the moment's a little bit hidden, and so we'll try to fix that now that we've got some nice language for it. I'll see if anybody else wants to jump in.
Well, Robert and Dave and everyone else that's here on the call, someone reached out with a question about how you might approach and how you might possibly understand an undergraduate titulos propios of 4 years. What might you do in that type of situation? Dave, Robert, any ideas for this person to consider when they're looking at this credential?
I'll push off the boat for this one and then quickly hand it over to Robert. You know, we're getting into a situation where it's almost analogous to programmatic accreditation in the United States versus, not every bachelor's degree program in the US has to be an accredited program within its specialty. So we're blurring lines on this one. The 4-year, I've only seen 1, at the most 2 of these, and it's been within the last couple months. The 4-year titulo proprio grado from a Spanish university does not lead to further study at the master's level. So for now, it's equivalent to 4 years of post-secondary credit. But as far as, being comparable to a US bachelor's degree, I think we have to, be conservative until we really figure out why these things are being offered. So it is valid coursework. It's going to be measured in ECTS credits, 240 for the grado. And beyond that, I don't think it's going to be that useful, for graduate admission in the US at most institutions. And I'm passing this hot potato off to Robert right now.
Thanks, Dave. But I really don't know that there's a whole lot to add other than to say, I guess I would liken this circumstance, because I've not seen these and I only knew about it when you brought it to us. I can only liken it to either the situation, and this is not really true, because I think I understand that what you're saying, Dave, is that they actually get a degree. It's just that it's not awarded in the name of the king. And the situation I was going to liken it to was Mexico with the Carta de Pasante, where they finished all the courses, but haven't done one aspect of the additional requirements, whether it be exam or thesis, social service, or what have you. And so they don't get the actual award of the titulo de whatever the degree program is. Probably more closely aligned or alike to the French. And I wish Emily were here with us today, but maybe we can bring this up another time in a future meeting. But the French Grand École, what they're doing now is they are taking students who've done their 2 years of class preps and 1 or 2 years of the Diplôme d'ingénieur, if it's an engineering degree program, Grand École, and they are awarding English word bachelor's degree in some kind of engineering. And there is no diplôme visé on this document. It is strictly a titulos propios type situation in France. It's not official. The ministry doesn't recognize it. It's not real. And so I would liken it to something like that. But I think, Dave, your explanation was quite full. And I would certainly do that. Same thing here at UT Austin. I would say, well, it's the same as if you'd collected 120 credits here at UT and never actually got it awarded.
Same at Walden University.
Well, I'm sure that this will continue to spark lots of interesting conversations, but that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to provide good information for you out there, what you can understand when you're seeing this, when it's coming across on your desk. And one of the things that we also wanted to touch on were some of our updates that we did across Canada, across various provinces. Robert, are you talking on this for just a moment?
Sure. As Drew was leading in there, that explains the top part of this slide, the bachelor's degree. We talked about this previously already. What we're doing today is informing you that's now in there. It is now in EDGE, Canada. What's new that we just recently did was the bottom part of this slide, which is the DES. Another one of the EDGE users out there indicated that when they went to EDGE Quebec, there was no indication of a DES, Diplôme d'études supérieures, supérieures. It's just not in there. So we had to put it in there. And it's a degree that's like you'd expect from its original grandparent in France, 1 year after a first degree, in this case, after the bachelor's degree in Quebec. Which, just a reminder, is generally a 3-year degree following CEGEP. So we would have no problem then calling it comparable to a year of graduate study. We don't call it a master's degree because it's a very applied, specialized program. And there are other degrees in Canada or in Quebec that we feel would be master's comparable, but we didn't have the DES in there. Now we do. The thing about the Maitri entry, that's simply to say that someone, I think it was Leslie, noticed that as we were working on DES, that we didn't have the entry requirement reflect the French. We simply had the English bachelor degree entry requirement. So we changed that, and it now appears in the French as well, because as you know, Canada is bilingual. And for sure, Quebec is bilingual. And so when we added it to the DES, we also had to go back and add the French entry requirement to the Maitri as well. And so we did, or will be doing it. I'm not sure, Drew, if that's actually been done yet, but those two changes are coming down. They're relatively minor, but they're coming down the line. And with that, I'll turn it back.
Thanks for that, Robert. Yeah, we just, even when things haven't necessarily been updated within EDGE yet, we want to let you know the conversations that we're having, the research that's being done, and, the check's just about in the mail. We've got it, kind of like it's almost in the envelope. I don't really want to lick that envelope. I'm gonna go get a sponge or something. So the check is almost in the mail. Julia, things that are coming up as opposed to just the check that's coming to us.
That's right.
What's coming up?
That's right. And while you all might be thinking it's June, we're heading off to the beaches with our suntan oil. We are not. We are working away, keeping busy here. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is the Baden-Württemberg Seminar. The applications remain open until Monday, June 20th. So there's still a little bit of time for you to get those in. We really encourage you to think about applying for this program. It is going to be in person this year in Baden-Württemberg, Germany, and it will be in late October. The focus of this seminar really is on the German education system and German-American academic exchange, looking at comparability and how we should get involved with one another, setting up partnerships as well. So who should apply? Well, anybody that really is involved in the international sphere. That includes registrars, it includes study abroad offices, international student advisors, admissions officers. So great way to get involved and a great opportunity for you to really learn and have an in-country experience. And while you'll learn a great deal, you'll also enjoy wonderful hospitality from the people of Baden-Württemberg, which they are now rebranding themselves as The Land. So big news there. There's a QR code there for you to learn more. Yes, and Shelby and Leslie both have long experience with the seminar. So if you guys would like to just pipe up and say anything about it, please do. Shelby, Leslie?
Sure. I didn't think I had a chance when I applied in 2007 to be chosen as a participant, but somehow you chose me and I was very thrilled. We spent our week in Stuttgart, and I have to tell you, that was an extremely busy week. We visited everything from a kindergarten all the way up through a postgraduate medical clinic. And we had the opportunity to sit down and visit with the registrar's office, visit with the people who work in the admissions office and talk about, okay, well, what does this type of credential really mean? And what can they do with this with this credential? And it was an interesting time for us to be in Baden-Württemberg because they had just introduced tuition. And one of the registrars that we met with at the University of Stuttgart spent a whole lot of time just talking about that he didn't understand the reason behind having to charge tuition. And there were some very interesting student protests as well. So it was an incredibly packed week, and I'm still in contact with some of the people that we met both within Germany and fellow participants from the US who were along with us. And I highly recommend it.
Leslie, if I can follow up to Shelby, because I have a sequel to what she just said. I went in 2006 and it was Heidelberg, but I was then most fortunate at subsequently in 2012 to return on the seminar. Well, I was invited for the first couple of days. I came to Tübingen because they were having an anniversary dinner, the 30th anniversary dinner. And I was at the time vice president for international at ACRO, and so was invited to say a few words to the group on behalf of ACRO. So I got to participate the first couple of days anyway before returning home to the seminar there that was going out of Tübingen. That the Green Party had won for the first time in the history of the state of Baden-Württemberg. And the first thing on their agenda was to get rid of tuition. And so, so by the time I had returned in 2012, and when I was there in 2006, they were talking about tuition and how it was going to get started in some states and not in others. For example, Baden-Württemberg was going to do it, but nearby next door, Rheinland-Pfalz did not, and so on. But then the Green Party won the elections in state government and did away with tuition altogether. So interesting time. Leslie, your experiences?
Yeah, everything that Shelby and Robert said is true, and there's so much more. You know, you look back on these things, and in addition to speaking to university administrators, we got to talk to students. We sat down with kindergartners. We sat down with gymnasium students, chatted with them about their experiences. I wanted to tell you also, I was involved with administering the application process for a number of years. And I can tell you, if you are interested in this, put in your application. You don't have to speak German. When you fill out the application form, my best advice to you is give some thought to your answers, give thoughtful answers. As a member of the selection committee, several times I saw a lot of answers like, well, I want to attend the seminar because I want to learn more about the German education system. That's a given. Think about how you will benefit personally and professionally from the seminar, and think about how you will share the knowledge. Other than that, all task areas within international education are welcome. So I'd encourage all of you to apply. It is just fantastic. It's probably one of the best professional development opportunities that you'll have throughout your career. So I can't recommend it enough.
And with that, I'm going to just round this out to say I was there during the one time I went was during a very political time too. I happened to be there in 2000. And when I was there, I remember going to bed one evening, watching CNN and other newscasts about the US election, which was being held that day, and thinking, wow, when I wake up tomorrow morning, the election will be decided in the United States. Well, if any of you recall the 2000 election of Bush-Gore, it wasn't decided until well after I had gotten home in December of that year. But the Germans were very engaged. The next day, they were very excited. In fact, we had the rector of the University of Constance, I think, tell us what she thought the election, which way it was going, that she had heard a report that Gore had won the election. And so we all know that wasn't the case, and it took another month plus, but an interesting time, and the hospitality and the experience can't be beat. So enough on that. We can go to the next slide. This is just a slide to show you what the timeline for the decision making on that process is. So as we said, the deadline is this coming Monday, June 20th. We will review applications, put them together in June, July, and then notify the finalists hopefully by late July. So not too long of a timeline. If you decide now it's time to put the application together, you are expected to pay your own airfare, or your institution pays your airfare. That is the one cost that is not picked up. And you should absolutely have, as it says in the application process, have a letter or a support letter or an email from your supervisor supporting your application to the seminar. Okay, onward. We also have a couple other things coming up. I told you we were busy this summer. We have a Technology and Transfer Summit that is scheduled for July 12th to 14th. This is an all virtual summit. We strongly encourage you to register for this if you do anything with basically transfer credit, technology issues that are related to that. And it's just a good time to learn some things, to connect with people, to network. There are going to be sessions, breakout sessions, roundtables. We'll be doing a transfer credit, international transfer credit session, Dave Mahaly and I. So please consider coming for that. Register now. The QR code is there for you to register. Onward. And we have an International Institute and an Acro International Institute and iSymposium coming up in July. This is a joint offering between Acro and AICE, the Association of International Credential Evaluators. Jasmine, who is not with us today, is the chair of that organization. And really, it's an exciting opportunity because we're both providing the Institute, which is going to look at evaluating professional qualifications in law and medicine from around the world, and then a day-long symposium to talk about that issue. This is going to be held in Kansas City, Missouri, home of great barbecue, good music. We invite you to come. The Institute itself is the 20th and 21st, so Wednesday and Thursday, and then the symposium is the 22nd, so Friday. If you have any involvement and any interest in now or in the future learning about law and medicine and evaluating those qualifications and their comparability, we would strongly encourage you to look at this as well. All right, next slide. And finally, something we always tell you about is the Gloria R. Nathanson Research Fund for International Education. This fund was started and awards up to $1,000 to support travel expenses, research materials, or other costs related to research that you would like to do. Types of projects that would be funded are sort of a full country study, or perhaps an update or a white paper on a specific issue. If you wanted to really dive deep into titulopropios, you could do that. So lots of possibilities there. We really encourage you to do this. You would have some great resources at your disposal here with many of the people that are on this webinar now. All right, that's it for updates from ACRO. Let's move on to a Q&A and see what we've got. All right, we had the question on the titulopropios already, which I think we have discussed. If there's anything else, Drew, you turned on. Did you have something you wanted to throw out there?
No, I was gonna see if I could drag some questions out of some folks here. I was gonna say, yeah, well, that was the only one that we've heard so far. And a lot of times when we're going through, we'll have questions that come in from the audience. As I mentioned at the front end, there were some questions that were sent over to us ahead of time. That really does help us so that we can continue to do this research. When we receive all of your submissions, it really does go into two piles, and those submissions that include that front end research that provide a rationale, that include those redacted documents that are protecting student information, those are the ones that our volunteers are able to work on. And we really thank you for all of that. Those that don't have as much information, that is going to take significantly longer to come around to. We appreciate you highlighting things for us, but any of the research that you do when you are trying to work on that, that would be helpful for us as well. You're going to get all of the expertise of everyone sitting in the room and folks that aren't even on this call when we get together and collaborate on these things. So thank you in advance for everything you send over. Julia, did something come in?
We have a question, and I'm going to punt to Dave on this and make it one that we can answer together. So Dave, here's the question. Given the recent updates on various law qualifications that we did in EDGE, can you elaborate on the difference between your suggested equivalency of a bachelor's degree with the note, this credential functions as a first professional degree in law in the United Kingdom versus a first professional degree, and how you determine which of the two applies for any given country? The distinction is important in terms of determining whether a BA in legal studies equivalency or a JD equivalency should be given.
I'm rereading the question just to make sure that I'm not missing anything. When we say that a credential, I sense that this is specific to university law admission through the official channels, but when we say something functions as a first professional degree and is a first professional degree, it's not the distinction I think that people are reading into it. There are degrees which are, let's say, comparable to a U.S. bachelor's degree, which we say function as the first professional degree. That's kind of a specific instance, but.
And I don't know that in UK I even see it as much as I see it elsewhere, where we might have something that's a bachelor's degree in law, and their system doesn't specify a specific degree as a first professional degree in law, but rather there are variations in what could be that first degree in law. And I'm going to go to, let's go to Taiwan, where you get a Bachelor of Law. And in Taiwan, basically any degree in law fulfills the obligation to take the exam. And so whether it's a Master of Law, a doctoral degree in law, or a Bachelor of Law, all would be sufficient for that purpose.
Right. I did, if we just jump over to, let's say, the Philippines, where you have a JD after a bachelor's degree, a first professional degree in law, almost, let's say 90% of the time, and probably more, isn't the equivalent of a US JD, which is a very specific professional degree, which, made its way up from a bachelor's level degree as professional qualifications started to adopt doctor, throughout all fields. But, for instance, in the UK, where you can't practice as a barrister until you go through a lot of post-degree legal training, we still say that LLB, or Bachelor of Laws degree, is a first degree in law. It's not the equivalent of a JD. So that's, that extends to a lot of different professional fields where you have, undergraduate first degrees in professions that we, consider to be post-baccalaureate degrees. So I just want to, we have to be careful when we say JD equivalency, to an undergraduate degree in another country. That's not what we're saying when we say it's a first professional degree. We're saying it's comparable in that it allows for practice, or allows for access to the training, that leads to practice. But we would rarely say something is, comparable to a US JD unless it follows that pattern. And I'm aware that there are provisions at various universities within certain states where you don't have to have a full bachelor's degree to get into law school. Sometimes you can do 3 years, but that's getting into the weeds. I think, that we don't have to walk into on this one.
Which really, this highlights the point that, that the credentials might be in there and there might be advice in there, but, you really need to dig deeper too, to understand what the functions are within the country and how that system is set up within that country. So just something to think about, and, come to the Institute and the symposium, as I think those things would be very helpful for you to just get a bigger, fuller picture of all this, because it's not quite as simple and straightforward as it might seem on the surface.
Julia hit the nail on the head about this is exactly why we're having the Institute and then the symposium on the same topic, and how tricky this is. For university admissions officers, of course, these degrees, let's stick with law, shall we? We won't get into medicine, but we think we know what they are. They're, like Dave said, they're functionally comparable to the first professional degree in law in the United States. It serves the same purpose in terms of access that the JD does here. But as Dave very clearly pointed out, the pathway, the number of years of education and all of that, the level is simply not comparable to the USJD. But the bigger question for university admissions administrators is, well, now, what do I do? What do I call it when someone applies to me to go to my strictly online master's in data science program and has to have at least a bachelor's degree, and then all they've got is a law degree? What do we call that? And that's a very good question. So a lot of credential services, I've seen this, will sometimes say that it's the first professional degree in law, and that's certainly what we say in EDGE. And then they'll have a note or something similar that says, academically, it's comparable to the US bachelor's degree, so that a university administrator, as opposed to a licensing entity or any other or immigration entity, might say, okay, now I know that I can admit this person into a master's program at my university. So now I have an idea of what it is academically. So this is the dilemma that we find ourselves with these first professional degrees in law, and sometimes the same in medicine as well.
Right, and we could even get into the nuances of a BA in legal studies versus a bachelor's degree of a Bachelor of Laws or whatever. So it gets complicated. And so, yes, by all means, come and learn more with us. We would love to have you there. We do have some other questions at this point. Rachel asked a question that says she's received questions about documents from Eastern Europe, and they have quite a few applicants from Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. That's great. She would be interested in a future session that focused on updates and example secondary documents for this region. She thinks there's a few countries in the region that have proposed reforms to update the system from 11 years elementary and secondary to 12 years. Not sure if there have been any formal updates in the last few years. Well, that's a great question and a great way for us to segue that you should be looking to a possible update on Uzbekistan, an update on Uzbekistan, not possible, but an update on Uzbekistan and secondary documents there, which we are working on right now. We did not have that quite ready to share today, but hopefully for the July user group, it will be in there. Anybody else want to comment on that at all?
I'll just add this tidbit. Uzbekistan did go up to 12 and then retreated from 12. So we'll keep on monitoring those changes as they occur. I think that happened maybe back in 2013 when they bumped it up, and then the most recent system they have it back down to 11 or 12 depending on the academic track that the student's in. So not unlike other countries that have a kind of a professional orientation with an additional year for their secondary qualification. Rightly
so, and that change, the change back ended up, I think it was in 2017, fall of 17. So yes, look for that. There will probably be a couple of slides that we'll have next month to explain that change and that what you need to look for, and those documents as well.
And all of these changes that we're mentioning really just highlight how important it is and how valuable it is that EDGE can be updated in real time. This leads right into another question. When is ACRO planning on updating Swaziland? What country? Eswatini? I know. It still says Swaziland within EDGE. And what we want to do is think about the right way so that whenever there is an education system or a country that does change names, it's going to reflect that all the way down. And so this is really just an internal question that we've been thinking about to make sure this is going to be reflected appropriately moving forward. It is not yet updated within EDGE. So the answer is, as soon as we can do it appropriately, that it is sustainable. That is when we're going to be updating Eswatini.
Wouldn't that be a great thing for somebody to apply for a Nathanson grant for, is to do an update on Eswatini?
For any profile that you go through and you have considerable information that you would like to share, that for whatever reason, maybe you've got family, maybe you've got friends, maybe you have an interest, whatever the reason is that you know a lot about this country or you want to learn a lot about this education system, that is a great thing that the Gloria Nathanson grant is able to facilitate. And it's something that if any of you know Gloria, she would just love for there to be advances being made in the field in her name. So are there any other questions that we have today?
Somebody just put one in the chat about Chinese grades.
Kurt's volunteering to do on-the-ground research in Eswatini. Thank you, Kurt. Really appreciate that.
As far as the Chinese grading thing goes, basically the Chinese grading scale is largely patterned along the lines of the US model. Originally, of course, China, the People's Republic of China, followed the Soviet model, but after the Sino-Soviet split of 1961, then things changed and they became more American-like, if you will, in their grading practices. Yes, I believe there is a D concept, and I'm one, by the way, who doesn't believe that the US D concept exists in many countries, but in the case of China, it does. And so I would certainly say that on the traditional scale, and I'm going to, if you heard an asterisk by that statement, then you're correct. But in the traditional scale, 60 to 69 is considered a D. However, some Chinese universities have departed from the traditional scale, widened their A range, 85 to 100, then 76 to, or 86 to 100, and then 76 to 85 is a B, and so forth. And sometimes they'll leave out, some universities will leave out a D concept. And when that happens, I always say default to the scale on the transcript. When the school departs from the traditional scale and uses their own, then you need to use that one as well. And if there's no D concept in that, well, sure, then I accept that there's no D concept. But otherwise, the traditional Chinese scale, where 60-69 is labeled a D, then that is considered by me to be comparable to a US grade of D.
I would agree with Robert on the idea that it's still there and it exists. I just think it's used far less often. You are definitely if you go back and look at documents from 20 years ago in China, 30 years ago, you've definitely seen grades improve significantly. And I would say that D grade actually still is there, but it's used far less frequently than it used to be used. I would venture to say the place you might see it, and you would see it more often, is on self-study. Okay, any other questions?
We have a question coming in from Terry. Any recommendations on what to do if a student said they couldn't get an official transcript from Kharkiv Aviation Institute in Ukraine? Just came up and haven't had time yet to look into it too closely, so thought I see what you recommend. Julia, Robert, have you come across any documents, any students from Ukraine right now? Any recommendations on what we can do when we're thinking about establishing those practices for those students that are going through these events?
The first thing I would say and do is to try to verify it through their electronic database verification. That's the first thing, and I can unless somebody else has it handy, I can grab that link.
I would simply add, while she's doing that, I would add simply that the ones I have seen, I've seen them because they left before the invasion, before February 24th. So obviously there was not an issue. I think the first thing to do is to be flexible about the date on the transcript. For example, UT Austin, we say it needs to be not more than a year old for graduate applications. And so you might want to be a little more flexible on that. And because of the lack of availability of very current transcripts versus one that may have been taken out and it's a year or two old, or 3 even. So be more flexible there, because where we are not flexible here at UT is that we have to have something. I understand there's a reason that this document cannot be obtained because of what's going on over there. But at the same time, I can't admit sight unseen or without full knowledge of one's academic background. We just have to wait for the situation to develop in such a way that we can get that documentation at some point. Now, I know ACRO has been very busy, not necessarily with Ukraine yet, but with other countries in distress. And so I would turn that back over to Julia.
Yes, we have lots of resources available. Please go to our website. We did a entire webinar on Ukraine. Dave was also on that panel. Actually, it was on Ukraine and Venezuela, and basically saying that whatever the crisis, some of the procedures and protocols that we would follow and recommend as best practices are the same. That webinar also has the link and a live demonstration, I believe, of our presenter, Tatiana McKenna, from ECE, going into the database and verifying the documents. I do have the information. I just haven't had a chance to type it into the chat yet, but we have a lot of resources and there's a lot of good information out there. The other thing that's out there, and I don't know if Shelby or Leslie have gone to it yet, or anybody else, Nancy, is that the ENIC NARIC has got a lot of good information, as well as the CHMEA just put up some information that they have as well on Ukraine, and sort of how to go about verifying and fast tracking, and lots of resources there. So there's a lot out there, and a lot of ways to go about sort of researching and making sure best practices are there, yet having flexibility within your framework so that you can address issues really where there are problems in getting verification. If this is a completed document, you should be able to go into the database, which they have prided themselves greatly on it being up and available in working order, even during all the conflict. So hopefully that's the case, and I will type it in the chat in just a second. Anybody else want to add to that? Okay.
No, I think I did see a different question. You just referenced that the webinar that Dave was on with Venezuela and Ukraine, both mentioned in there. I think there was a question that came in about Venezuela, and I want to say I saw it flash across my screen. Shelby, were you going to be answering that one today, or am I?
Well, I'd started to type something, but apparently I hit the wrong button.
Well, I guess we are answering it live.
Yeah. So I was going to ask a follow-up question. Were these two credentials from Venezuela, were they technicos by any chance? I think that was Gabrielle who typed that in.
It was Argentina.
But they were not like licenciatura degrees. They were the lower level technical degrees, probably, correct?
That's what I'm assuming. I think Técnico Superior, which would be 2 or 3 years, is the only one that I could think that an agency would call an associate's degree.
Right. And having previously worked at a credential evaluation company, I can say that we would never combine 2 of those degrees to create a bachelor degree equivalency. We've had at my current institution, we've had some pushback when people say, but I have 4 years of undergraduate study. That's true, but you don't have the equivalent degree from Argentina to be considered to hold a bachelor's degree. You do have 4 years of study, but it's at the same level. So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
It looks like Gabrielle says, yeah, that was their take as well.
Perfect.
Well, this is pretty good. I think we're pretty much there. Julia, you got anything else that you want to say here to wrap up at the end?
Sure. I would just say, join us in conversation. We love to hear from you. We love to have you involved. So you can get your Edge subscription by scanning that QR code. You can certainly join us on our international activities group. That would be a great place to pose some of these questions and look for answers. And you can also support your colleagues by answering questions that you know the answer to. So by all means, do that. And then our Acro Connect newsletter. This comes out every 2 weeks, and there's always something to do with international or multiple international articles in there. And we hope that at our next Connect article, you'll get an introduction to our 2 newest IESC members, Leslie and Shelby. So that'll be exciting. And everything that was mentioned in here, all the slides, here are the QR codes. If you can go back, because these slide links aren't going to be live for you, but you can go on to these QR codes and get involved. We'd love to hear from you.
All right, guys. Thanks. Stay cool out there.